As we continue reading through this minor prophets, we get to the book of Obadiah, the shortest book in all of the Hebrew Scriptures, a total of just 21 verses. The main focus of Obadiah's prophecy was to condemn the nation of Edom, which is not so unique because 9 biblical prophets actually prophesied against Edom at one time or another. What makes Obadiah's message so unique is the man himself. Tradition tells us that Obadiah was an Edomite convert to Judaism, so he knew firsthand the culture and the people that he was speaking against. He was one of them as he grew up. In Hebrew, Obadiah's name means servant or slave of God. So maybe he chose it for himself when he renounced paganism and chose to follow the one true God of Israel. He held a high position in the northern kingdom of Israel. He was the administrator of King Ahab's estates. And we read in 1 Kings chapter 18 that Obadiah was a man who revered the Lord God greatly. And it says that he bravely saved the lives of 100 true prophets of God when wicked Queen Jezebel decreed their massacre. It's helpful and I hope interesting to understand some background about the writer of this prophetic book. But who were the Edomites after all, and why did God decree against them so frequently? Well, the Edomites were actually relatives of the Jewish people. They descended from Esau, and you can read about that in Genesis chapter 25. As relatives, they should have been allies and stood with the Jewish people, but in fact they did just the opposite. When the Babylonians came and besieged Jerusalem and eventually conquered it, they sided with the invaders. The Edomite soldiers, when they found Israelites trying to escape the conflict, gathered them up and actually handed them over to the Babylonians. And God was so incensed with their actions against his covenant people that he told Obadiah to prophesy against them. And sure enough, within 100 years, the kingdom of Edom was in ruins. Obviously, God cares a great deal about how other nations of the world treat his covenant people, Israel. The ancient Edomites were physical relatives of the Jewish people, and God expected them to stand with and support them. As Bible-believing Christians today, we trace our spiritual lineage to the Jewish people through faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God expects us today to do the same as the Edomites of old. When hostile pagan nations come against them, God expects us to stand with the Jewish people. And when anti-Semites threaten Jewish people or spew false information, we should be the ones who speak up with truth and call them out. Near the end of his book, Obadiah proclaims the sovereignty of God over the nations. And because of his covenant love for his people, he promised that the house of Judah would one day be restored. In fact, in verse 20, we read how Jewish people of Spanish descent would return to the land and settle in the south of Israel, in the Negev. That prophecy is coming true today. Just as God has been faithful to the Jewish people and his promises to them, we need to learn from the example of the Edomites. We must stand with the Jewish people, and we must join God in bringing them home to the land of Israel.